All right, folks, Mark here, cooking books, bringing the info. So I want to talk about ADHD, attention deficit hyperactive disorder, and ADHD. I want to talk about it, and I think it's Ritalin. It's the drug that they give your children for ADHD. I want to talk about what ADHD is, and I'm not talking about what it is medically. I'm no doctor. I don't ascribe to that at all, any kind of medical degrees or anything. I'm just a person who likes to research, study, and share information. Uh, Attention, deficit, uh, hyperactive disorder, ADHD. It's pretty much when your kids just can't sit still. Even adults just can't sit still, right? The average adult attention span is anywhere between 20 to 30 seconds. I mean, it's stuff you can kind of read. So it's about lack of being able to concentrate one's attention. In essence, that's what ADHD is, a lack of control of the attention span. Being able to center your attention span on one thing for a certain amount of duration, for a set duration or interval. Why? Now, let's talk about what causes this, right? And I'm gonna come from it from a scientific standpoint. Like, what causes ADHD? What causes this attention span deficit disorder? And how to remedy it, right? Without the putting your children or your adolescent youths on any kind of drugs, right? Because the drugs only makes them dependent and it only makes the situation worse and creates all kind of other side effects, right? So, which is not good for your child or yourself. So again, ADHD, it's a lack of being able to concentrate one's attention for a set, for a steady amount of time. What causes ADHD or what causes the attention deficit or the deficit of the span of the attention is your brain waves, right? I'm not. I could say it is the high velocity, the high velocity with which the neurological transmitters are accelerating uh, electrical impulses at a very high frequency. That's right there. You're like, what the hell is he talking about? I'm not going to use those jargons. I just threw it out there to sound fancy schmancy. What I just said in lay terms is this: your thoughts are going too fast, right? Your thoughts are just the electrical impulses in your brain are just firing off way too fast, right? And that's what I just said in science using scientific linguistics and jargons. But that's all it is. Your thoughts are just going way too fast, right? Your thoughts are just going, and therefore you're hyperactive, right? And then you can. And this is what causes the attention, the lack of the attention span, right? The brevity of the attention span. This is what's behind it. The high velocity, right, of the neurotransmitters, the electrical impulses, the synaptic network, right, and the neurons firing or electrical impulses at a high velocity. And again, in lay terms, it just simply means your thoughts are just being fired off way too fast. Okay. Now, parents, I want to talk to you specifically for your children. First of all, it's natural for your children thoughts to be firing fast. It's totally natural. They're kids. They don't have the burdensome of responsibilities, whether it be financial, uh, running a household, uh, a job, a career. They don't have these things. They're children, and then children consume lots of what? Candy, right? Typically, well, I'm just being general here, right? Because I know some of you are going to say, "Oh, I don't let my kids eat candy." We're not talking to you. We're making a very general statement. So, because children do consume candy, and candy gives children a lot of energy, right? It's unhealthy, but we were all kids once, so we're not going to blame anyone for that, right? We're all guilty of that to some extent, some degree. As a kid, I used to have a brown bag of all the time. I would have a brown bag with sour powders. Oh, I love them, love them. So no one's guilty of that, right? We're all guilty of that. I mean, we're not going to hold that against anyone. But here's the thing: children are supposed to naturally stay. Now, I said it's your thoughts firing off rapidly. That's what caused the attention deficit span. Uh, the thoughts firing off rapidly puts you in a certain brainwave, right? There are four states, right? There's delta, beta, no, alpha, and beta in that exact order. When you sleep, you're in delta. You can't sleep unless you're in delta. Delta is the lowest brainwave. I think it's like 0 to 1, and then 1, which is theta. Theta is where children reside, right? This is why children are very imaginative. Not just children, but we're talking about children for a minute. Children are supposed to reside generally in theta. Now, they do fluctuate, just like us adults, we fluctuate, but children generally reside in theta. If you talk to any neuropsychologist, any child psychologist, uh, children pediatrician, anyone who studies this stuff, they would know. Children generally fluctuates in between theta and yeah, generally in theta. Not, yeah, and that's a healthy state for a child to be in, right? It's a very imaginative state, creative state. This is why children are so creative and so imaginative, right? This is why children love cartoons. There's a reason why cartoons appeal to children, especially children. Some adults do. I still like to watch cartoons every now and then. Well, not really. Well, with my daughter, I do, but not on my own. But some adults like cartoons, and the reason why cartoons are so the reason why we're so enthralled, why children are so, specifically speaking, children are so enthralled and bewitched, and have there's a compelling force that attracts a child to the cartoon is because children reside in theta. Theta brainwaves are the imaginative and creative brainwaves, right? Great artists also reside in theta, right? The Beethovens, the Mozarts, the Johann Sebastian Bachs, the Vilvadi, I think it's pronounced Vilvadi, uh, Chopin, all these great musicians, they all also tapped into theta brainwaves to become creative, right? Because that's your creative ways. So all artists, writers, singers, they also reside in theta, but children generally reside in theta. So what happens is when our children, right, are being exposed to aggressive video games, very aggressive. I don't want to just say violent because violent limits it to just violence. Aggressive. It doesn't have to just be violent. It could be any kind of fighting, any kind of aggression. A constant aggression in terms of video games. In terms of social media, whether it's the conversations that's being had on social media, the advertisements that's being advertised to your children on social media, the news feed, the influx of information that's being streamlined through their feeds on social media. What that is doing to the child, it's called something. What it's doing to the child, unbeknownst to you, the parent, unbeknownst to the child, what's being done is what's called entrainment, specifically brainwave entrainment. And that's again, it's a jargon that simply means you train the brain, right? It's a fancy schmancy way of saying the brain is being uh, tamed, molded, and fashioned to reside in a specific state. Remember, I told you there's 4 states. There's delta, theta, alpha, alpha, and beta. There's also gamma, but gamma, we're going to leave gamma out because most people do not go into gamma. The only way you enter into gamma is like if you're taking crack, if you're taking some kind of psychedelic, some kind of drug, that takes you into gamma. But generally, again, very generally speaking, we stay between delta and beta, right? Delta, theta, alpha, beta, in that respective order. So what happens is with the constant exposure of the technology, well, again, whether it's the internet, the computer, the notepads, social media, the video games, our children are being exposed to this on a regular basis. So the consumption, right? They become consumers. The consumption of this technology, and you got to understand the technology that they're consuming are high frequency waves, right? An aggressive video game is a high frequency wave. So aggressive social media is a high frequency wave. Aggressive Instagram, high frequency wave, right? So these waves are at a very high frequency, right? And when I say high frequency, I mean the vibratory rate is they accelerate at a very high velocity, which just means speed, right? So there's a very high rate of vibration in all of the technology which is in the environment of the child. And most of our children today are being raised by video games. Let's not lie. Let's not kid ourselves. We're being raised a lot. Not all, but a lot are being raised by television, are being raised by Facebook, are being raised by Instagram, Snapchat, all these different, media devices, right? So what's happening is the child who's naturally supposed to be in theta is being entrained brainwave entrainment, as I said, it's simply a fancy way of saying you are training the brainwave to be in a specific state. It's called brainwave entrainment. You can research this stuff, it's all online. And entrainment, again, just simply means you put something on. If I get on a plane, I entrain the plane. If I get on a boat, I'm entraining the boat. If I get on a ship, I'm entraining the ship. If I get on a train, I am entraining the train. Entrainment simply means to get on something, put something on something. I entrain the boat, right? So brainwave entrainment means you're putting the brain on something, right? You're putting your brain waves on a specific wave. Children are supposed to reside in theta. They're being put into beta. They're being put into alpha. They're being put, some, very few are being put into gamma, right? And now, because their brain waves are being entrained, put on higher frequencies than they're supposed to be. They're supposed to be in theta and fluctuate between delta and theta. Not delta so much, but fluctuate between delta and theta. But really theta. This is where children, young adolescents, typically young, are supposed to be within the theta. But they're being entrained by all of the technology in their surroundings, in their environment. And what that means now is that because the brain waves are being entrained on higher frequencies, those waves are going to dictate all the motor functioning of that child, the motor mechanisms of the brain of that child. So the CNS, right, central nervous system, right, the basal ganglia, which is a part of the brain that is responsible for like certain movements, certain involuntary movements, and so on and so forth, right? So they're going to be entrained. The brain is being entrained on these high frequency waves, again, being picked up by the constant consumption of the social medias and et cetera, et cetera. And because those waves are at such high velocity, the child's brain waves is now going to start. It's called frequency following, right? Because they think of it like this: they're being paired. You know how you pair your phone? You can pair your phone to this phone, pair your phone to that, pair your phone to your car. You get in your car, and now you can make your phone calls directly out of the car. You don't need the phone anymore. Or you walk next to the car, and immediately the phone picks up the car picks up the phone. Because they synchronize. So that's what's happening to the child's brain waves that's normally supposed to be in theta is being entrained and paired and synchronized with the waves of the technology with what they're consuming, unbeknownst to the child and unbeknownst to the parent. The parents are not even aware of this, right? Because this is not like everyday information. This will be considered esoteric knowledge or esoteric knowledge, which means like knowledge that is only confined to a few, right? It's very limited or occult knowledge where only a very few people are privy to this information. So the child is being, like I said, synced, entrained on these high frequency velocity waves, and now the child is now going to be functioning according to the consumption of the high frequency waves that they've been entrained, right, or synchronized with. So now this is why the child cannot sit for 5 seconds or 10 seconds or 20 seconds. I'm exaggerating. You get my point. This is why the child cannot concentrate on studying for his homework, because what's going on with the waves is his waves are going so fast. They're going at such a high rate. They're not supposed to be going at that high speed. The rate at which the child, and again, you guys, EEG, electroencephalograph, right? EEG, I'm sure we all heard of EEG, and then you have EKG. You can go to doctors and actually see what I'm talking to you about. Like, they could measure the waves of your child. And I'm sure the wealthy people who have the financial wherewithal and the resources do these things, right? Uh, so you don't need to give your child Ritalin. I'm going to tell you what we got to give your child, but bear with me. No Ritalin. Don't put them on no drugs, no antidepressants, none of that stuff. And again, I'm not a doctor. I'm just telling you there's holistic, organic ways to reverse and re-engineer the entrainment. So the child it's impossible, almost impossible for the child to sit down and study for an hour, a half hour. I'm not even going to push it. A half hour, 20 minutes, 15 minutes without the child being easily distracted. He's constantly being distracted because his brain waves are operating at such high velocity that he's fidgety. And then They come in, they look at the child and say the child has attention deficit disorder. The child has the child is sick. The child has a mental ailment or a impairment or some kind of mental disability. You see how this works? Now we need to give your child this drug. We need to give your child this sedative. We need to give your child. You see how this works? And then the parent now, who doesn't do any research on their own or does not endeavor or make efforts to better themselves and understand themselves, just are docile. They're submissive, right, to the will of the doctor over their child. Now the child is being doped up and drugged up, and now you're creating a monster because who knows what the outcome in the event of this child is going to be, right? We all see, you see what's going on outside. We see these children nowadays. You don't know what the side effects of these drugs are really doing to your children, right? That's the science behind ADHD, the attention deficit span disorder nonsense. That's the science behind it, right? That is the science in its totality, comprehensive. It is candid. It is frank. It is in your face. Boom, bam, thank you, ma'am. That's the science. Okay. So I never want to offer or point out a problem without offering a solution. Oh, the solution is sweet too. I love the solution. This is the good part. This is the good stuff. Your patience have paid off because now I'm gonna give you guys the good stuff. I just bored you with all of that. I'm gonna give you the good stuff. The good stuff is this. You ready? If it is the technology that has spun your child brain waves onto a higher frequency or a higher plane, a high dimension, so to speak, then it is the technology that can reverse it, that can undo it. But what kind of technology? You see what I'm going? Like, you know, technology just means it's just not knowledge that is practical to an organism. That's all the word technology really means. Knowledge that can be put to practical use for a species or for an organism, right? So the technology could be anything in your environment that you interact with and you use practically. So knowledge of anything in your environment that you can practically use purposefully for some kind of benefit. So that's what technology really means. So the knowledge of music, if you have a real solid scientific knowledge, just like I gave you a scientific explanation of what's going on behind the attention deficit disorder nonsense, the science behind the music is amazing. Because the science behind the word music comes out of the word muse. Muse were considered they were personifications of the arts. They were goddess and goddesses. They were goddesses, and so they would be the god of poetry. Would be a muse because they were inspiration for the person who was writing or composing the music. So a muse would be considered a god that inspires me to write poetry. So the muse of poetry, the inspiration for poetry would be called a muse. Uh, if I'm a songwriter, I would rely upon or I would call upon someone, summon the muse of songwriting, musical compos. If I compose the music, if I compose any kind of music, it would be a muse, particularly to that music, to that genre. So this is why you see the word muse. This is why you find the word muse in the word music. Uh, you find the word muse in museum. You find the word muse in a musin, right? You'll find it hidden. It's coded in these words, but this is the inspiration behind the exhibiting the arts that you see in the museum, the arts that amuses you. You're amused by it, right? There's a muse in that art that amuses you. That's why it's called a musing. But I digress a little bit. Let me get back on track. So music is the answer. Music is the cure to attention deficit disorder. Music is the cure. Yes, 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 yes. Music is the cure. Now, here's the next question. Well, what do you mean music is the cure? And what kind of music, right? There's different genres. Is it heavy metal? Is it rock? Is it rap? Is it hip hop? Is it house music? No, none of that. That's actually part of the problem, sadly. If you study Rhapsody, right? It's actually part of the problem of the attention deficit disorder. So actually, I didn't throw it out there through social media and all this stuff, but also a lot of the different genres of music is also a part of the problem, right? But here's a solution in terms of music. Classical music is the genre that cures and cures all the ailments of attention deficit disorder. Classical music will cure attention deficit disorder. Let me explain. I did this in previous videos. If you watch some of my videos, I talked about Mozart. I talked about Johann Sebastian Bach. I talked about Chopin. I talked about Vivaldi. I talked about obviously Beethoven. If you understand these men compose their music in 432 hertz, and 432 hertz is equivalent to Schumann's resonance. Schumann's resonance is the Earth's music, the Earth's heartbeat, the Earth's pulse. It's a natural rhythm that the universe and the stars dance to. If you can understand the importance of aligning your child's brainwave with Schumann's resonance, which is found coded in 432 hertz, which is coded in Beethoven, which is coded in Mozart. If you understood, right, the hidden power or the hidden remedy cure that was composed within the music, you'll understand that having your child specifically, let me say this is it right here. Don't let them listen to it when they're awake. It ain't, you can do that, but if you want to be very effective, you don't play classical music to them while they're awake. They're going to get bored. They're going to be, oh, mom, dad, I don't want to hear it, especially if they're teenagers. Oh, heck no. Forget about it, right? They want to hear rap music. They want to hear what they've been conditioned. Again, brainwave entrainment. Their brains have been trained to listen to a specific frequency. So they're not going to hear that. Here's what you need to do. Hey, listen up, parents. Y'all should pay me for this because this is some good stuff. When your child is asleep, you go into their room and you play in their room while they're sleeping. You play Mozart, 432 hertz classical music, sonatas, flutes, whatever. You play Beethoven. You play Johann Sebastian Bach. You play all the Vivaldi. You play the Chopin. You play, like I said, you play this classical music while they're sleeping. It's very important that you play it while they're sleeping because while they're sleeping, that music is going to sneak its way right into their subconscious mind. It's going to skip see if they're woke, if they're up, they're conscious, right? And they're going to think, I don't want to hear this. So immediately they're going to start blocking it out, right? There's a block going on, right? Because their brain waves are then trained for whatever, not this. So the brain waves are going to naturally build a resistance to that. And this is why they'll say, Mom, I don't want to hear this. Dad, what is this? You'll get the attitude. What you do is wait till they're asleep. And when they're asleep, they're not conscious, right? They're completely in the subconscious state. Now, when they're sleeping, that music is seeping specifically into the subconscious mind, which is where you want it, because that's what controls everything. The conscious mind controls everything, right? Your conscious mind controls, I believe, like 9 or 10% of all that you do. Yeah, so therefore, the 90% is controlled by the sub. So what you want to do is you want to play it while they're asleep. Let the music seep into their subconscious mind and let that entrainment begin because that's what's going to happen. Your child has already been entrained by all the stuff I named in the aforementioned in the foregoing statements. So for you, and I can hear some people being skeptic. Oh, that's brainwashing my kids or messing with my kids' minds. I chuckle when I hear people say stuff like that to me, like, "Oh, you messing with people's heads, you brainwashing." I chuckle because I'm not mad at them. I understand the ignorance, so I chuckle. But I have a very pleasant rebuttal. I say pleasant because it's not disrespectful. It's very pleasant. I'll say something like, "Well, if you don't brainwash your child, then who will?" Right? Somebody's going to brainwash. Matter of fact, not somebody's going to. Your child is already being brainwashed in the first place, right? Everything I said in the foregoing statements in the aforementioned is brainwashing your child. Social media is brainwashing your child. Uh, the internet is brainwashing your child. The video games that are aggressive is brainwashing you. I mean, your child's being brainwashed regardless. I mean, so when people say that to me, it's like, look, yeah, your kid's gonna get brainwashed anyway. Your kid is being brainwashed anyway. All I'm trying to tell you is to incorporate yourself in the brainwashing. I mean, if you're the parent, shouldn't you want to be the one to uh, mind control your child? Shouldn't you? If you're the parent, and I'm talking about responsible parents, shouldn't you be the one that want to have that influence, the precedence, the prominence, the most paramount, most central influence in your child's mind? Shouldn't you want to be that? Well, if you're not going to actively do that and be that, someone else is already doing it, or something or someone else is already doing it. As a matter of fact, the evidence is the fact that your child is now being told, you're being told that your child has attention deficit disorder. You need to put the child in a class with 5 kids. It's called special ed. We need to put this kid, your kid needs to be in a special ed class where there's only 5 kids and 2 teachers, right? Because the kid is slow, he's a nut, this kid is he's wacky, he's off the rockers. That's what they're doing to your kids anyway in school, right? If you don't, and if you aren't aware of the fact that your child is being brainwashed, is being mind manipulated, is being mind controlled. So, for all those who would say, well, what I'm saying is this, that, and the third, ask yourself that question. Is my child not already being brainwashed? If it's not Instagram, it's Snapchat. If it's not Snapchat, it's Facebook. If it's not Facebook, it's all kind of other stuff out there. So you might as well get in the race. But I digress. So again, play those music, the classical music, while the child's asleep, and doing it one time, 2 times not going to work. Okay, so this is not a quick fix. Your child didn't get that way to the attention deficit disorder overnight. It took a series of time on events, years, right? Your child didn't just wake up when all of a sudden they can't control their thoughts and they're all over the place, right? They can't sit and hold their attention for 5 seconds. It took time. So playing classical music for your child while they sleep once or twice a night is not going to work. What iteration is the key? And iteration, again, it's a fancy jargon to say repetitiveness. You have to do it as long as needs be till you see the change in the child, till you see a calming, more balanced, a more concentrated and focused until you see the results in the schoolwork, till you can see your child turn off the TV, turn off the music, and study. When you start to see these things, then you know, okay, it's the entrainment has brought my child back to where the brainwave should be. He's no longer in beta and alpha. He's now back in theta, right? Because you stay in theta for, but I believe up until maybe it depends. There's no set age. It's again, it depends because we all evolve uniquely, right? But on average, through your whole adolescence, you kind of stay in theta. Childhood to teenager, again, with the exception of some prodigies, you got some children who are extremely, you know, what is it? Precocious, right? Right? Precocious, right? They're a little bit more advanced, more developed. That's what precocious means. So if that's the case, then yeah, it's not, they could be a little bit more, they could be in beta by the time they're 16, 17 because they're more advanced. But typically, the child will be within beta up until the adolescence. Once they start to get a little bit more mature and deal with more responsibilities, obviously they go into beta and into alpha and beta. And, at this time they're into adulthood or young adulthood or whatever the case may be. So to save your children from these, this Ritalin, or I think that's what they call it, or any kind of sedative or kind of drugs to keep them concentrating, you got to understand that nothing is wrong with your child. What's wrong is not what they say is wrong. That's the point. It's not that something is wrong, the brainwaves, but it's not that your child is sick or have any kind of disability. It's some crock of nonsense. Uh, yeah. So, one more thing. This is important. So we talked about brainwaves, right? There was a Thomas Young did an experiment, right? It's called the double slit experiment to find out whether light behaves as a wave or a particle. And this is very important too, because science, I'm telling you, if you can apply science to your everyday life, it's amazing. Uh, a wave is spread it out, right? We know what waves are, right? You go to the ocean, you see waves. Waves spread out. They spread out. They go out, right? A wave is spread. Uh, a particle is localized. Concentrate is focused. It's a particle is solidified. It's localized. It doesn't. It's the opposite of the wave. The wave is spread wild, spread out, all over the place, right? A particle localized, concentrated, right? Consolidated, concentrated, localized, whatever. Why is that important? They found out something called the observer effect. And with the observer effect, when you look when you look at light in this experiment that they did, They found out when light is being observed, it behaves as a particle. A particle is concentrated, consolidated, localized. When light is not being observed, it behaves as a wave. A wave is spread out. Now, think of these things as symbolisms. Waves spread out. If 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 your way if your mind is wide open, spread out, that means you're not focused, you're not concentrating, you're all over the place. The wave represents disarray. A wave spreads out, there's no organization. Think of it, this is metaphoric, right? It's literal, but I'm showing you how it's metaphoric and how we can apply it to life, right? So the wave represents chaos, right? Nothing is organized, it just spreads out. You take a rock, you throw it in the water, and you see the waves just kind of like they just go out, right? There's no well, there is a pattern, but there's no organization. It's just an array of waves that just goes out, right? Splash, the water waves just go out, right? Whereas that's so when light is not observed, it behaves as a wave. It just splashes out. When light is being observed, it's consolidated and it becomes a particle. And this was an experiment they done years ago. Thomas Young, Niels Bohr, Einstein, all these guys, right? And so they came to the conclusion that a light is both a wave and a particle, depending on whether it's being observed or not. So it's in the eye of the observer, right? This was the double slit experiment. So this is why it's so important, because when it's being looked at, it consolidates, it's concentrated, it's focused. This is how you got to look at it, right? It's symbolic. When light is being looked at, it's focused, consolidates, it concentrates, it's localized. When your child is being looked at, consolidated, he's concentrated, he's localized, he's focused. When he's not being looked at, the child is in disarray. The child behaves like a wave. He's spread all over the place. Our kids are all over the place. The moral, I think you see where I'm going. The moral of that is the observer effect. When there's a parent observing the child behaves differently. This is observer effect in psychology. You can research this up. It's called observer effect psychology. But the observer effect actually has its inception in light wave particle wave duality, right? Does light behave as a wave or particle? That's what has its inception. It has evolved, matriculated into observer effect psychology. So, from a psychological standpoint, if your child is being observed, the child will behave differently, which is consolidated, concentrated, focused, and localized. If the child is not being observed, the child behaves like a wave, which is spread out all over the place. So, that means if there's a parent watching, that child will behave differently. Just like the light. Think about it. It's a metaphorical, it's symbolic. The light behaves differently when it knows it's being watched. When a child knows that he has a responsible mom, a responsible dad, someone who is present, that child will be localized. Like the light, it will concentrate, consolidate, and localize into one focus. When the child knows there is no responsible eye to observe, the child will behave like the wave, which will be a disarray spread all over, and your kids will be in trouble. Till next time, if you like the video, hit a like, share it, leave me a comment. You know how I do. I cook the books and bring the info. Peace.